oil prices increased in 2021 as increasing COVID-19 vaccination rates, loosening pandemic-related restrictions, and a growing economy resulted in global petroleum demand rising faster than petroleum supply. The spot price of Brent crude oil, a global benchmark, started the year at $50 per barrel and increased to a high of $86 per barrel in late October before declining in the final weeks of 2021. Global petroleum production increased more slowly than demand, driving higher prices. The slower increase in production was mostly attributable to OPEC Plus crude oil production cuts that started in late 2020. OPEC and other countries such as Russia that coordinate production with OPEC announced in December 2020 that they would continue to limit production increases throughout 2021 to support higher crude oil prices. OPEC Plus agreed earlier this month to stick to its planned increase in oil output for February because it expects the Omicron coronavirus variant to have a short-lived impact on global energy demand. But the United States has been urging the group to pump more crude to help the global economic recovery from the pandemic and also to cool prices. But the group has said the market did not require extra oil. OPEC Plus is unwinding record production cuts of 10 million barrels per day, which were imposed in 2020 as demand and prices recover from their pandemic-induced slump. Brent crude rose 50% last year and has rallied so far in 2022. And just a few hours ago, Brent crude hit $87 per barrel. This is the highest it has been since October 2014. Today, we're focusing on the 2022 global outlook for oil and gas. This is Business Edge. I'm Tolulokwe Adeleru Balogun. Welcome. Joining me today is Bola Adigun, partner, West Africa corporate finance leader for Deloitte and Touche, and she's going to be going through this conversation with us. Bola, welcome to Business Edge. Thank you so much for joining us, Bola.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be on today. Thank you very much.
So let's start with looking at some of the trends that came in from 2021 that we might find ourselves facing in 2022. From a low of about $69 per barrel that hit December 1st, 2021, we're seeing Brent crude now at $87 per barrel as of today. What are some of the trends that you see affected the prices in 2021 that we'll still be struggling with or contending with in this new year?
Okay, thank you for that. So with global crude prices, there are certain factors that sort of influences the trend or where the crude price is at any point in time. One of that is the global inventory of crude, as well as the supply-demand interplay. What do I mean by supply-demand interplay? They're looking at oil production vis-a-vis oil consumption. There are multiple predictions as to where crude price would be. Some analysts think that would be around $100 per barrel by, say, mid to end of this year. Other analysts think would be around that 70-something to 80-something dollars per barrel. What are the factors that have gotten us to where we currently are? We know that economic activities are on the rebound. Countries are no longer willing to lock down like they did initially at the start of COVID in 2020. So that economic activity is fueled by oil consumption. And that demand certainly has led to the increase in crude prices that we currently see. And we predict that the demand for crude or oil consumption would sort of continue even into 2022. Thank you.
All right. So you mentioned that we have estimates that are saying crude might hit about $100 per barrel for this year. Some saying it'll stay around that $68, $70. Do you have any projections in regard to the pricing average that you think we'll find crude oil for this year?
I think I would go with the conservative estimate of around, say, the late 70s, so about 78, 75 to 78. And that's because fundamentals support this level. You know that there are certain players, for example, OPEC is able to influence where crude prices are. And they can do that from the supply side of that late 70s, so 75 to 78 dollars per barrel. That's where I predict the crude price to be.
Okay, so we've hit $87 per barrel, a price that we have not seen in the past 7 years. And around that time, we had crude oil also hit $90. It also hit $100 as well, retreating from a high of around 115. In particular, now you said that what's driving this is increased demand that's coming as economic recovery is booming. That's correct, right?
Correct.
So how long do you think?
That's correct.
So how long do you think we can stay around this $87 per barrel? If we're going to average the high 70s or late 70s, as you put it, for the year, how long do you think this rally is going to hold out right now?
As long as there are no, so I think you look at it from the both sides of the equation, the demand side of the equation and the supply side of the equation. We know that China remains a major driver of oil demand. For example, in 2015 alone, China accounted for 44% of the increase in oil consumption in that year. So long as there is no sharp decline in activities in China, and then production quotas remain in place, in which case we do not have a supply glut. I think the oil price can be sustained around late 70s, early 80s.
So we've heard, of course, that the U.S. with the Biden administration has been urging OPEC Plus to increase production. And they say they want this in order to help global economic recovery. But OPEC Plus has pushed back, saying that the economy, or the global economy right now, does not need extra oil, even though OPEC Plus is unwinding record production cuts of about 10 million barrels per day. And they've actually agreed to 400,000 barrels per day to be added over the next few months. Should we be concerned about the rising price of crude, especially with major players on different sides? The U.S. has threatened to release some of its store onto the international market as well. What concerns should we have in regards to that?
So increase in prices of crude can be positive, can have both positive and not so positive impact. How do I mean? The inflationary pressures that come with increase in crude prices often would have impact on the prices at which people are able to buy crude refined products on the streets of their different countries. And so, for instance, let me bring the example. Let me bring it home to Nigeria. When you have crude prices going towards $80–90 per barrel, it's very good for us because crude is a major crude oil is a major income generator for Nigeria and is a major FX generator as well. So it's good for us on one side. But on the other side, it means that the prices of products that are deregulated will continue to increase. So, for example, diesel cost would go up. To the extent that the government continues to subsidize refined products locally, then the government will also be spending a lot more on subsidies. So it's a chicken and egg situation. We benefit from increasing prices, but locally also we also have to spend a lot more.
So let me quote well, not fully quote, but the Omani oil minister, Mohammed Al-Rumi, recently said that OPEC Plus does not want to see crude oil hit $100 per barrel. And there are a lot of conversations around why that may be, but let's speculate a little bit, Bola. Why do you think OPEC Plus may not be happy to have crude oil hitting $100 per barrel across the global production conversation?
Okay, so it's in two parts. First of all, what is this? If production hits $100 per barrel, naturally you see supply increase, right? So countries like US, from shale production, you see a lot more production. And when you see that, and what comes with that production is a glut, which means that when crude price increases to a certain point, the price will not be sustainable. And what you find then will be a sharp decline in prices on one side. The other part is that you're looking at the inflationary pressures that come with increasing crude prices on consuming countries. And on the balance of this, it's not in the interest of anyone to have crude price at $120 per barrel that is not sustainable. And that is why OPEC is a very strong advocate of prices at a set beyond prices not getting past a certain number. And the reality of the matter remains that OPEC has the capacity to influence crude prices from the supply side of the equation.
All right, so Bola, I'm going to take a break here, but when we come back, I like the fact we're talking more about this OPEC's influence. But even as much as they have influence, there's also a struggle that OPEC has been facing with a number of its producers because they're struggling to meet their production quota. So we'll pick up the conversation from there and then, of course, talk about certain things around countries like Nigeria. So just hold on. We're looking at the 2022 oil and gas global outlook for 2022, and OPEC is on the road to increasing output. But it's not just that simple. A number of producers have been struggling to meet their production quota. How will this affect global prices this year? We'll get into this after the break. My guest is Bola Adigun, and we're looking at the 2022 global outlook for oil and gas. And supply chain disruptions have affected many sectors. Technology, manufacturing, even oil and gas itself is not immune. So Bola, let me bring you back in here. Now, could the backlog and the current disruptions that we're seeing in terms of moving goods further impact demand and pricing in 2022?
Okay, so 2020 slash 2021 sort of exposed some of the inadequacies or inefficiencies we have in our supply chain, and naturally that reflected in some challenges that we have with supply disruptions across multiple industries, oil and gas, manufacturing. Those problems would not automatically disappear in 2022. However, because of the benefits of understanding these challenges from the year 2021, we believe that a lot of companies are better positioned to address some of these challenges. So, for example, infrastructural challenges, lack of skilled or semi-skilled manpower at the ports. Companies are now using tech-enabled solutions to address some of these challenges. So, we think, we have the opinion that the disruptions will not be as significant as what we experienced in 2021 because companies are better positioned to provide solutions to these challenges.
Okay, so let's talk about plans that OPEC has. So OPEC has announced that they are again raising the target by 400,000 barrels per day for February, leaving about 3 million barrels per day that they still need to unwind by September. Ongoing oil production outages in Libya, struggling production recovery in Nigeria, and reduced expectations for Russian production capacity have added a bit of bullish weight to the scale for the supply side. Now, OPEC Plus producers missed their targets by 730,000 barrels per day in October and 650,000 barrels per day in November. So first part of this question, with the increase that OPEC is attempting to add to production, do you think that OPEC producers or OPEC overall will be able to meet the increased production quota?
Okay, so it's not as straightforward to meet production quotas. So, for example, two of the major producers in Africa, Nigeria and Angola, have been struggling to meet their production quotas. For instance, in 2021, between Nigeria and Angola, both countries combined did not meet their quota with about 76,000 barrels per day. So again, combine that with, and these are mostly as a result of internal disruptions, security challenges, conflicts, inadequate investment in the specific on specific blocks, fields, as the case may be. So so that already would have impact on prices because it means that on the supply-demand equation, some part of the production or the supply is not going to materialize. And if you see demand accelerating, then you see prices going to remain around that late 70s and $80 as you currently see at the moment.
Mm-hmm. So the second part of the question is that impact, as you mentioned now, on the global prices. How long do we expect it to last? We don't know how long the Libya situation will last. We're not sure how long Nigeria will continue to struggle to meet its own production quota. There's the Russian conversation also to be had. There's the pressure from the U.S. as well. What do you think all of this will end out in the next 3 to 4, 6 months?
What we predict is that certainly there will be no sharp decline in crude prices because of the dynamics that we have explained. Because we expect that economic activities will continue to be on the rebound, and it means that there will be a lot of demand for crude, for industrialization and all of that. And if supply is not accelerating as fast, then we see prices going to remain around that late 70s and $80 plus barrel range, because that is where the prices will remain to the extent that you don't have significant supply to cause a glut in the market. Now, let me also flip that question to say, what are the impacts? For countries like Nigeria or Angola, which are unable to meet their quotas, it means that they'll be losing market share because countries that they typically supply to will be serviced by other countries. So they are going to be losing market share. They're going to be losing the revenues that will be very, very significant in accelerating development and growth locally. It means that because of this interplay and these dynamics, crude prices will be high, and the cost of refined products locally would also be high, to the extent that those products are not subsidized. And then it also means that there will be decline in supply of gas, especially associated gas, because to the extent that you're not accelerating your production of crude, to some extent, it also impacts on your production of gas. Thank you.
All right, let's stay on Nigeria and even African producers who typically are looking at revenue from crude oil prices for their economic development. Is there any short-term solution for OPEC countries like Nigeria, whose economies are largely dependent on bullish prices? We benefit with better prices at the global markets, but when we look at things like our budgets and where we're putting crude oil, when we're benchmarking it in terms of debt to service ratio and making sure that we're able to finance projects, it's also an issue. So is there any short-term compromise, some kind of bridge for countries like Nigeria while they're trying to scale up their production capacity?
Okay, so I think, in this sort of dynamics, diversification is just the way to go. And what to diversify is with gas. That way you're able to mix you're able to sort of influence the potential outcome of your finances. So the short-term solution that I see is diversifying with gas. Now, demand for gas continues to accelerate globally, as a lot of companies are now going for cleaner energy or for clean fuel. So the short-term solution is to put some investment into gas production.
Okay, so Bola, we're wrapping things up, but last year, let's look at where Nigeria's oil outputs hovered, and that was around 1.3 billion barrels, 1.3 million barrels per day, as opposed to the 2.4 that was expected and we had seen in some of the previous years. What do you think are some of the long-term dangers for an economy like Nigeria, and even just for us as a player on the global space, if oil production or oil pricing remains around that $86 an average, even if it's just temporary, even if it's just for a few weeks or months? Okay, I think connection issues there with my guests, but wanting to look at how things would play out if we see oil prices remaining around $86, $87 a barrel. Just a few hours ago, as I said earlier, the global benchmark for crude oil, that's Brent crude, had actually hit $87 per barrel. And that's a price we haven't seen since 2014. There is some excitement to that because it'll put extra money and extra revenue in the pockets of producers such as Nigeria and Angola. But there's also a side to it that makes things much more difficult, as Bola has said, in terms of what it means when it comes to inflation and cost for a number of things. All right, so we are going to take a very, very short time out to see if we can get Bola back with us as we wrap things up. And a very interesting question I want to ask her. At the end of the day, as we look at 2022, who do you think is going to have a better year, Bitcoin or Brent crude? Stay with us. And my guest is back with me. Perfect timing as we wrap things up. Bola, so I was just asking you that what long-term dangers do you think a country or an economy such as Nigeria may face if we continue to see global Brent crude oil prices hitting $86, $87 in this year? Is there any concern for us, particularly at this point?
Oh, yes, because you find that cost of products locally would increase, and that will have knock-on effect on products and services locally, so transportation, goods and services. You find the knock-on effect on the average person on the street, the price that they have to pay to buy goods or to obtain services. And you add that to the current inflationary pressures that we're currently experiencing in Nigeria, it doesn't paint a very good picture. So yes, there are some concerns as a result of this.
All right. So finally, I'm going to end with this question. Who do you think is going to have, or what? You're already smiling. What do you think is going to have a better year, Bitcoin or benchmark crude oil prices? Bola, tell me where you're laying your money.
Brent, absolutely Brent.
Why? Because let me know. So let's hedge our bets here. Why do you think so?
Because the fundamentals support Brent. There's going to be acceleration in demand. Economic activities can only are already on the rebound and increasing, right? And to the extent that supply is not accelerating at the same pace, then you can always put your bet on Brent.
Okay, we'll take it as that.
So the fundamentals support that.
Okay. Always put your bet on Brent because the fundamentals are there. Bola Adigun, thank you so much for joining me on Business Edge. We look forward to having you back.
Thank you.
All right. So she is betting on Brent crude oil prices this year, $87 a barrel, prices not seen in the past 7 years. How long would that rally be sustained? And what does it mean for producers such as Angola, Nigeria, Liberia, Libya as well? Where do we gain and where do we lose? We'll be watching to see how things play out, but don't forget, throughout the year, we'll also be touching base on the Bitcoin. The rallies are there, the numbers are there, the losses and gains as well. You can trust that right here on Business Edge, we'll have all the figures for you. Up next is, of course, NC4 to watch. Stick around. And we start nowhere else but with oil prices on NC4 to watch, and the prices have edged higher with Brent trading near its highest level since 2014 as the market tightened and concerns about the impact of Omicron eased. Now Brent steadied above $86 a barrel following a fourth weekly rally as winter temperatures supported demand for heating fuels. France's Total Energies and Japan's Inpex Corp say they have agreed to sell their interest in Angola's Block 14 BV to Angolan company Somol for an undisclosed sum. Net production from Block 14 BV has been 9,000 barrels of oil equivalent per day in 2021. The value of Sudan's currency fell by more than 3% to 465 pounds to the dollar on the black market as demand for dollars surged amid continuing political uncertainty following a coup in October. The Sudanese pound had mostly stabilized in recent months after being sharply devalued in February 2021 as part of economic reforms carried out by a transitional government and monitored by the International Monetary Fund. And finally, Nigeria's inflation climbed to 15.63% in December after 8 straight months of decline as prices for food and non-food items rose. Nigeria's Statistics Office says the inflation, which has been in double digits since 2016, rose by 0.23 percentage points from 15.40% in November. And that's Business Edge. Don't forget to follow us on social media, download our mobile app, and of course, watch us across all the platforms we are available. 11 a.m. West African time, right here on News Central. We talk African business, finance, and economics. I'm Tolulokwe Adileru Balogun. Have a pleasant day.